Hey all, David Sable coming to you from Silverstein Studios in Lower Manhattan, the epicenter of New York's creativity, the renaissance of New York, where people are out and about again, restaurants, offices, in the street, energy. It's absolutely amazing. I bring you creativity from the other side, where we talk to the greatest creative minds in our industry and elsewhere and get behind the scenes with them, understand what makes them do it big every morning. Why don't they just stay in bed? Why do they get up and every day challenge themselves to do bigger and better and more important things? And of course, we come to you for New York festivals, the greatest ad award show in the world, in our opinion, and definitely the one that you all need to be paying attention to. And today I'm here with an already FOD. So actually I can dispense with what I usually do at the end of the show, because so many of the people that I actually interview, I meet for the first time and they become FOD, friend of Dave right away. You've been FOD for almost 10 years, and we've been working the other side. So my little CFOS, creativity from the other side friendship, with, of course, FOD. The FOD in the middle.
That's awesome.
So I expect to see you post a picture with that someplace.
Totally. I got to rough it up a little bit, give it a little, maybe cut the...
Well, you can do that. Put a little blood on it. It's actually like a CBGB's kind of.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like
it needs a little blood, like punk, from. Yeah, exactly. You got
some
it.
Pins. It's awesome.
Pins and stuff.
It's great.
And you're giving away my age, but we won't go there. As I said, we've known each other for just about 10 years now. I've worked with you most of that time. Most of the time, I had to steal you. I had to surreptitiously work with you because you were working on a ton of other stuff and often in a different company. Yeah. But you were always, for me, a go-to, somebody who, not just who I respected, but who I needed. And just, I think the number of new business pitches we worked on is kind of epic.
It is.
And more importantly, as important as all that stuff was, because it allowed me to do what I'm going to say next, is you also working on a bunch of nonprofits. Right. And always are the person that I go to when I need help with innovation and how to make innovation real and how to apply innovation to success and to actual turning, as we were talking about before, with some purposefulness into profit, which is really what's important for any nonprofit, although we could argue for real companies too. Right. But having said that, new job, new focus.
Focus.
VMLY&R, great foundation.
Amazing foundation.
You excelled, you were incredible. Worked on the most important accounts, worked with me on a bunch of stuff, and as I said, but now you're going to Lippe Taylor.
I am.
As the Global Creative Director. So first of all, congratulations, a big hug.
Thank you.
That's like amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us, why Lippe Taylor? What are you excited about? What are you thinking about? What are you going to do?
I think it occurred to me as we were sort of moving closer to where we are today, that the idea of creativity at speed is really what this whole game is about, right? You look at sort of the velocity of media, you look at the velocity of the networks we're putting our content on, and, we're getting beat by regular people, by people who are plugged into culture and creating content at a pace that far exceeds the pace that a big agency is used to creating, right? Because of the layers and the approvals and the this and the that. And then coupled with that, we're sort of on the precipice of a new age when it comes to the tools that we're using in creativity, right? We talk about generative AI, we're talking about, consumer-led identity, we're talking about decentralization, talking about community. These are all sort of foundations that I've kind of been tracking over probably the past 20 years and really kind of building, at least for myself, connections between all of those things as what I always saw as sort of the future, and kind of what it took to create amazing work, in sort of a Blade Runner like environment. And so for me, it really was about being with kind of a smaller, more intimate team, but also I didn't want to lose the fact that in order to do creativity at speed, you had to have deep, deep relationships with your clients. And I've always felt that PR or agencies that had legacies in PR always had the best client relationships. They were sort of like the consigliere of the client. You know, whenever I would bring a client a crazy idea, I knew they were calling the PR agency right away and going, is this guy crazy, right? Is this going to put me in jail? And, you know, so what I loved about Lippe Taylor was the idea that it had this heritage in PR, a savviness, and sort of the way I saw the relationships and some amazing brands, you know, and kind of their vision for wanting to move into this more fast-paced, this more future-forward kind of really reinventing what the AOR really means, which I think is less about creating things, because I think we're all great at creating stuff. Everyone at this altitude is talented. What I think the next sort of thing in terms of bringing value to brands and clients is less the craft and the creativity. It's more about the orchestration of the entire thing. It's like, how does it all connect? You know, so you see like brands are pretty fragmented. They're all over the place. They're kind of this thing on Facebook and this thing on TikTok, and we're getting more and more channels. And now we have, every day there's a new thing. And I'm really just like fascinated with the idea of being sort of more of an orchestrator and thinking about how everything works end to end across that entire spectrum. And
with the customer in the center.
Of course, always with the customer at the center. And I do believe that with a lot of the legal changes around data and privacy, the customer is at the center more than they've ever. And really, they are the ones controlling the destiny, right? Like Nike's not telling the customer what to do. The customer is telling Nike what to do right now, and what they want, what they expect. So for me, it was just a tremendous opportunity to go to a place that had all of that sort of DNA, and a place that, you know, was really willing to take a chance on my crazy mind.
Well, good for them, because it's no chance. I know that for a fact. I can tell them that I know that it's going to be hugely successful, as it has been for me and as it was for us at VML Y&R. But let's just talk a little bit about it, as I'm fascinated by this notion of PR having better relationships. Yeah. So as you know, I had a good stint at BMW, at DC. Yeah, BMW, I drove one. Right. But at Burson Marsteller and at Cohen & Wolf, now BCW. And I always believed, and I was trained by Harold Burson, you should rest in peace, and it was just some of the great luck of my life, along with Lester Wunderman, later on at Wunderman, that I had these incredible opportunities with the greats in our industry. But I always felt after I left Burson, so I came into Burson from the ad side, and then I left Burson and went back to the ad side. And I always felt that it wasn't just our relationships, it was our relationship to the company. Because in the PR side, you really have to understand the company, the environment. You need to understand the investors. You need to understand Wall Street. You need to understand to your point, the orchestration of every single thing. Because when Craig at VML calls with a nutcase idea, I better have an answer for the client who's calling me about whether or not that adds or not. And I felt that when I came back into the ad world, I felt we were a little shallow. And I have felt that shallowness getting more shallow over time.
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. And, you know, I think for me, having been somewhat of a journeyman, you know, in my career, just in terms of wanting to really explore all of the different angles of the industry, you know, I felt that, to your point, I think you felt the same thing, that shallowness, you know, and I felt like in order to do the best work, in order to really push the ideas that I believed in to the next level, those were the relationships that I needed to figure out how to create and how to endure and how to, you know, sort of manifest into different kinds of work. And in my head, when I sort of started putting the pieces together, and it was sort of like a matrix-like moment for me, it was clear that, you know, the foundation of this agency and the aspiration for what they want to do matches what I needed from a that relationship.
Which is why, by the way, you're the president of the Future Now jury. Like you just gave me all the reasons why,
Right.
We've asked you to take that jury on, because I think for New York festivals, because I think, in fact, that's everything you're talking about. But we'll get back to that in a minute. I just want to talk about the work for a second.
Yeah.
So this notion of work at the speed of work, if you will, is interesting to me, because, as we know, there have been a couple of agency groups out there talking about faster, cheaper.
Right.
But the truth is that the work that we're attaching our clients' work to is neither done faster
Correct.
nor cheaper.
Correct.
It is some of the most expensive production in the history of mankind.
Correct.
In my view, some of the best, maybe the best production ever. And interestingly enough, I think Amazon even admitted to it early on when they first started Amazon Studios.
Yeah.
And if you remember their first year, nobody remembers anything
Right.
that they did.
Right.
And they had originally said, well, what are you talking about? We're going to have the best work because we have the algorithm. We know exactly what people like.
Right.
Turns out, had nothing to do with the work. And the next year they said, like, guys, made a mistake. This is not about computers. It's about the best directors, the best actors, the best producers.
Totally.
So sometimes it gets actually a little frustrating even when you're watching something you love and then it's another year.
Right.
Even with binge watching,
Right.
it's still on Netflix another year until the next season shows up.
Right. So I want to make a distinction between those two things, because I don't mean that the work itself has to be faster. When I say creativity at speed, I mean the process in which you come up with the work, right? I think where a lot of...
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Maybe how you come up with it, but also how you adapt it.
Yes. And
Because that we never did.
Right.
In the old day, you did 2 commercials a year, and it was like a lot.
That was it, right.
Now you have to be able to work quick.
Exactly.
Off of what you have.
Exactly. And when you think about, and I know this is sort of a kind of in the past a little bit, but you think about like the old newsrooms where everyone was kind of bustling and there was never a second to stop and think. When a story came in, you had to go. And I feel,
hold the front page.
Exactly. And I feel like there's a certain element to that we in the industry have kind of like, I don't think we've lost it. I think we're starting to find it, right? And I think when culture hits, when things happen, we need to move. We need to go. We can't stop. We can't think. Our clients want to know our point of view in the moment, come up with an idea in the moment, figure out how to make it work in the moment. And because in the next moment, there's going to be another brief. There's going to be another
point, orchestrate.
Exactly. And orchestrate it. So to me, that's creativity at speed.
Great.
The final product, to me, requires the craft and the detail, and all of that is the human part that goes into the making of it. But to me, creativity at speed is thinking. The thinking has to be at speed. The collaboration has to be at speed. I mean, clients they need things now.
So let's talk about how do we teach clients and ourselves how to embrace innovation, new technology, but do it in a way that is actually good for our business. I'll give you an example. And we've talked about this before, right? Take blockchain, for example.
Yeah.
3 years ago, blockchain was going to change everything in the world. Every client that I know hired Accenture or PCO, whoever, to redo their entire infrastructure on blockchain. Today, like, nobody talks about it. Bitcoin was another one. Bitcoin was going to change everything we do. Banks were going to be dead. Like JP Morgan, everybody should be out of business by now. Both blockchain and Bitcoin were totally unbreakable. Nobody could ever hack them. Well, that proved to be not accurate. So how do we embrace, without jumping in fully, disrupting stupidly what we do, but not missing an opportunity that may or may not come?
Right. It's a great question. I think technology, first and foremost, has a branding problem. I mean, we know that these technologies, there's nothing wrong with blockchain. Blockchain is brilliant. Blockchain can fix so many of the problems in the world. It has a branding problem, right? Because some idiot went and took everyone's money and like blockchain was associated with cryptocurrency and cryptocurrency was associated with NFTs. All of these things are awesome. All of these things have a purpose. They have a function. They're containers for creativity. The problem is that, there are bad actors out there who try to use them for things like extortion and ripping people off and pyramid schemes and whatnot. So, just like brand safety, right? You don't want to put your logo next to something that might be, unsavory. I think the same thing goes with technology. You really have to understand what to embrace, what's right for you. I think if it's really just doing it for the sake of doing it, for a PR headline, you're not doing the right thing.
Right.
But I do think that if you can come up with a real use for something like blockchain, or say, just don't call it blockchain. Build a community on blockchain. Don't call it blockchain. Call it something else. It doesn't matter. The technology's there. So I would tell my clients exactly that. I would try to sort of suspend the agenda of whatever kind of negative connotation goes along with whatever it is that might be, have a,
So how would you say, for example, and maybe this is the answer to the question. So NFTs, what is an NFT really? It's a way of showing provenance of something, right? That's all it is.
Totally.
We've turned it into pieces of shit digital art.
Right.
And that's what everybody thinks, right? So, oh my God, it's digital art and I'm going to make $100,000.
Right.
Versus it's actually about provenance. So imagine if you're Ford and every car comes off the line, that car is basically an NFT.
NFT. It has a VIN number. The VIN number is on the blockchain. That car is an NFT.
And you're done. You can follow that car forever, and there's nothing that you won't have.
Exactly.
Versus today, it can be erased. Things can happen, but...
And what I love about that is, you just said it. It starts to create a legacy. Who owned it? Where'd they go? What'd they do? There's a story. All of a sudden, that provenance now lends itself to telling a story, right? I always give the example, remember the Seinfeld episode where George buys Jon Voight's car?
Yeah.
It was a piece of shit car, but he bought it just because he thought it was Jon Voight's car. And then when he found out it wasn't really Jon Voight's car, he was ready to ditch the car, right? So that same kind of thing. I think once we can attach a story to something and prove that that thing actually had that experience, it creates a whole new life for itself. And I think that's the appeal of the NFT. The NFT, I think, was sort of adopted by the art world primarily because they understood the BS mechanics, because the art world does that.
Right.
Even before NFTs. I mean, galleries essentially bought from one another and they drove up the price, and they knew there was a kind of a...
Right, they knew how to hype
They knew how to hype the thing. So I think we'll get back there. I do think we'll get back there. Your example is perfect. I would tell the CEO of Ford, every car should be an NFT. Crazy not to be.
Right, and that's maybe not call it an NFT, but
right, call it something else. Don't call it an NFT.
Right?
Exactly.
Branding problem. I got it. I love it. So now that keeps us current.
Yes.
How do I stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah.
Do I need to be ahead of the curve? There's always this issue of bleeding edge, leading edge,
so
dying edge.
I always liked the way Amazon did it, right? The way Amazon stayed ahead of the curve was they always built technology for what people needed now, right? And then Bezos would go to his backyard. He'd fly a drone over his backyard. A reporter would take a picture. The headline would say, Amazon's now delivering with drones. And they were ahead of the curve. It's marketing, right?
I love it.
I don't know that we need to be ahead of the curve per se. I think that, we tend to overstep our audiences. We tend to overstep the people that we're really serving. I think that as long as we stay current and as long as we kind of have our eye on where things are going, I think that it's possible to really sort of project, at least to the world, that you sort of have a roadmap to the future. And I think that's why, even within sort of the Web3 world, the term roadmap, which, it's a roadmap.
It's a good one.
Right? A roadmap.
In ways, yeah.
But what it does is it tells people that you have your eye on the future without having to invest millions of dollars on something that might have zero application to your business now.
Right.
Right? So, yes, AI, super interesting, amazing. Does it have much use for, maybe not? Maybe yes, maybe no. I think you really have to be real with yourself. But I think that you can live in the future by telling a story about your interest in the future without having to like fully invest in that future. And I think that's enough.
Right.
You know,
I love that. That's a great way of looking at it. So I would say, so let's take the drones as an example. So you're right. I remember, that's basically how it all started. Now, the interesting thing is, drones have been used, UNICEF, which I'm involved with, has been using drones for a long time to deliver blood and supplies to places that are war-torn that they can't get to. But nobody talks about it because it just wasn't as interesting. And by the way, they weren't these kind of drones. They were more plane-ish drones, so it wasn't as interesting to people. I don't think you had to be a genius to figure out that in New York City, drone delivery was not going to be something that's going to happen tomorrow or next year. Can you imagine the number of drones?
You can't even walk on the street.
Like they'd be crashing and falling. It wasn't going to happen. And so I just think we get to your point, companies want to be too ahead of the curve. They get themselves caught up in this stuff. And then they win a prize at the other festival. And everybody's really excited about it. And then
never happens, right? Everyone's still waiting for flying cars. Everyone's still, I mean, we talked about autonomous driving 15 years ago, and we're still not there today.
Although I was watching the Jetsons when I was like 6 years old, and I thought there'd be cars before.
And so I do think it's exciting when brands talk about the future. I do think it's exciting when brands try to, project into the future, because what that does is it makes people excited about what's to come. But I think when, to your point, when there's sort of a false impression that the thing is here and we're doing it, and then everyone's like, where is it? Amazon Go, right? That was supposed to change the entire retail landscape of like not needing people in stores, right? You just walk in with there's like 2 of them, right?
Actually, let's talk about that one for a second. That was going to be my next question. So let's talk about relevance. How does a brand stay relevant in this world using all this stuff? So I was thinking about it and thinking about what I was going to talk to you about. And I was thinking sometimes relevance is not culturally relevant as much as it's usefully relevant. So let's take Go as an example. So let's even think they have 1 million stores. But if you ever go into the Amazon bookstore, I remember I went the first day, if you remember, there was one at Columbus Circle. I waited outside till it opened in the very first day. And I expected that there would be salespeople or whatever, helpers on the floor with a cube or something to check me out. And instead, I picked up a book and somebody came up and said, hey, I see you got a book. You want me to hold it for you? I'll put it at the counter. You can shop. I said, oh, great. I shop some more. And then I have to get on the retail line. And I didn't just get on a retail line. I got on the old-fashioned retail line that had all the little tchotchkes and things I could pull off. And as I started to talk to the people, because they had some pretty senior Amazon people, it was the first day, they said, listen, obviously, if we let you check out like this while you were holding that one book, you would have bought that one book
and left
and walked out.
Exactly.
This is nothing to do with technology. Nothing. This is just like good human retail, human understanding. That's relevance.
Right.
Would you agree?
I would agree 100%. I oftentimes think about, the e-commerce world, and I compare it to a shuk. Right? You walk into a shuk. And
explain what the shuk is. The bazaar.
A shuk is a bazaar in Middle Eastern countries where you would buy spices and meat and everything. I mean, there's nothing you can't buy there, which is also awesome, right? It's like you're walking into the past, and you can buy anything from a Rolex to, turmeric, and chicken, right? But it's super interesting how the dynamics in that place work. When you talk about like that kind of that human, people yelling and screaming, everyone's trying to scream over one another, and they're already bargaining with you before you even start, and when you kind of take a step back and you look at all of those different dynamics, you can start, at least in your head, to map those to all of the different sort of experiences that I think we're seeing today, right? Like self-checkout and this, and I do think there's a world in which those 2 things live together, but I do think that the technology needs to be somewhat invisible, and I do think that if I was able to walk through a shuk And I was able to pay with my face because the guy had a little camera in the back, and all I needed to do was like wink, and he got his $5. I got my falafel, and amazing. But when you try to replace those things with something that just, doesn't feel right, with like cold technology, it just loses its luster.
So it's interesting you say invisible technology. I've been hearing a lot about that from the people that I respect in the industry versus others who love to, it's digital first. It's like they feel the need to push the technology versus to push the relevance of it or the use of it or the transparency or the invisibility of it, which is, to your point, I think more important.
Totally. I mean, I grew up, I was a hacker when I was a kid, and to me, it was always about how do you hide the technology in order to change behavior, right? And when you reveal the technology...
And hide yourself.
And hide yourself.
To someone else's.
I've had the FBI visit. It's being able to apply those things to real human behavior and being able to introduce it in a way that feels natural. It shouldn't feel robotic. It shouldn't feel like technology. It should feel natural. It should be intuitive. It should be instinctual. It should be emotional. And I think that's where, when we see it, we know it. I look at people like Elon Musk. I know a lot of people have a lot of issues with Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk, the way he went about building the Tesla, one of the features, I love this one, sort of one of the features in the Tesla is called ludicrous mode.
Right.
What better name than technology? Like if that was another car company, it might have been like the G5 2.3X axle. Ludicrous mode. All you have to do is hit the ludicrous mode button and the car like goes crazy. That's technology. To me, that's like a great example of taking something, a piece of technology, and sort of creating like an essence, like a human essence out of it. And people love it. I mean, it just demystifies.
I also think it's interesting you bring that up, because I've been having this discussion and a bit of a debate about this all week. But to me, the most interesting thing about Tesla is, first of all, they do have showrooms. They're different, they do. I was just in Florida. I saw one in the design center, the design district. It was amazing and beautiful. And you've seen other ones in LA and elsewhere. But at the end of the day, what they're selling is a hunk of metal.
Hunk of metal.
It is a car, because we know what happens if you sell a Prius.
Right. Exactly.
It's not the Birkenstock crowd that's buying the Tesla.
Right.
These are people who want to go 0 to 60 in 5 seconds or less.
Right.
They want something that looks cool. As has been pointed out many times, it's a DeLorean design taken forward, which is nothing wrong with that, because it was a beautifully designed car.
Right. Well, what I love, to me, it all started with buying it through an email, right? It started there. I mean, the worst part of the car buying process
is walking in. And speaking to somebody in a suit that doesn't quite fit.
So think about what he did. He said, I'm going to remove all of that friction. All of the friction and the anxiety and the pain people experience at the onset of that major purchase, gone. You're going to get an email that has a button that says buy now. And you buy it, and you give them the $1,000, and they ship the car to hold it, and they ship it, and that's it. And that's it. And you know what you're getting. And like you said, it's a hunk of metal, but it's the experience.
It's the experience. Although I can tell you that picking it up is not as easy as buying. Picking it up is still the exact same. Yes. Having done both, picking up my Jeep and going with my son-in-law to pick up his Tesla, which is pretty funny that he has the Tesla and I have the Jeep. Mine's stripped and his is not. There you go. But it was the same experience. You still got to show up. You got to wait, and they take you out, and you hope that they take you through all the stuff and press this button. It's ludicrous, and it goes through. Press this button. What happened? Oh, isn't that great?
Yeah. Look,
which is fine. I'm not putting it.
Yeah. All problems are not solved. I mean, you're going to experience that, but again, I think what he's done.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think he has a sensibility and a comfort with technology in which he sees it through a very human lens.
So imagine if Ford had started there, with the front part of the experience,
Right.
and what might have happened.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I find that actually that's a lot to think about what you just said.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
thought.
yeah.
So everybody think about that, because that's really like what happens if you start the front end of the experience in each time. And it's not about the battery and it's not about the recharging, but that's where he started, and that's what made the big difference.
Right.
What
It's a
would have
commodity.
happened-
The car's a commodity.
Right, it would have been interesting to think about what would have happened if Ford had started
Right.
there
Right.
before him.
Yeah.
Or at the same time, and maybe gone one better somehow.
Right,
Like
right.
what would have happened? Where
Right.
would Tesla be today?
Right.
Tell me about self-sovereign, decentralized identity. You mentioned a little bit before, but explain it.
Yeah. So I've been really fascinated about, sort of the shifts in culture where we're seeing people, really embracing a sense of fluidity with who they are, right? Like you no longer have to be one thing. I think people are presenting themselves on a spectrum of identity. And I think that people have been doing that forever. We just haven't had the ability to express all of those different identities in ways that felt comfortable, or in a culture that felt comfortable enough to do that, right? We're all many people. We contain multitudes. And I think that we're in a time and a place right now, and we're on the precipice of an age in which I think that is really starting to come out, right? So the idea of a self-sovereign identity and the idea of you being in control of who you are, in control of the data that governs your experiences in everything, right? I think about the movie Minority Report, right? Tom Cruise is walking through and everything is reacting to him as he is in that moment. And then he has to change himself, right? And then he has to alter himself, and things don't react because quite the same thing. How many times am I going to have to fill out the same?
Example.
Yeah. How many times am I going to have to fill out the same form? How many times am I going to have to, get retargeted with an ad that's not for me? How many, so all of the frustration, you talk about the front end.
Don't tell the ed tech guys. 'Cause
But you talk about the front end, like the front end. To me, the idea of self-sovereign identity is being in control of all of the experiences that are programmatically designed for me. Right now, we have an entire industry. What's the industry? Billions and billions and billions of dollars in the industry that are essentially designing ads for a single aspect of who you are as a person, right? And you might not even be that person in that place in that time. When I'm buying sneakers, I think I'm LeBron James, right? I'm like, in my head, I'm dunking. I can't dunk, right? But that's who I am when I'm buying it. And when I'm buying a jean jacket, I'm a cool hip guy, so I really believe that we have an opportunity now to not just think about creativity at speed, to think about targeting at speed, to think about content creation at speed, to think about relationship management at speed. When you think about CRM, right, addressable audiences, one-to-one relationships, that world is now becoming dynamic. It's a moving target. And I think our job is going to have to understand, how are you, the customer, going to be accurate in which you're going to share your data with me? Because it's your choice now, right? And Apple essentially, kind of threw the first punch. How do we respond?
or hand grenade.
How do we respond as advertisers, as creatives, as people, as marketers? How do we respond to that?
So it's interesting. If you remember, Bill Clinton won his election originally through microtrends.
Correct.
It was a famous book by Mark Penn, a good friend, and talked about soccer moms.
Exactly.
They realized that there were soccer moms, and they created a whole persona around soccer moms, and it was very good. Years later, I wrote a paper on nanotrends and said that's what the web has done to us. Right? The digital channels have made us nanotrends. So I could be a soccer mom. I could be a chef.
Exactly.
I could be on Fans Only.
That's right.
I could do all of these things and still be that same person. The question is, who is that? Who's the real person? And are you talking to me in each persona that I'm in, which really isn't a persona. It's who I am at that moment.
Exactly.
So this notion of creating personas is wrong. It's like, who am I in that moment? And do I care to get the jeans jacket when I'm being my suave whatever? Do I care about getting the LeBron James dunkers when I'm somebody else?
Exactly.
Like, maybe yes, maybe no, but I don't think we know.
Right.
And I don't think we do enough. Because I think it's not just about the targeting, i.e. the ad tech.
Right.
I think it's also about the psychology and insight into who people are.
100%. And I think we're underestimating our audiences, you know, and I think that our audiences have far surpassed sort of, you know, our ability to properly communicate and have relationships with them. You know, I think that you know, we know there's a ton of waste out there, and we, you know, and there's more waste than ever. The internet is essentially a pile, is essentially, you know, a garbage dump of just of very expensive, you know, very nice looking, very clever things that mean nothing to no one.
Exactly. We're overheating the world with servers that are stuffed full of dead websites and dead digital content and stuff that nobody ever wanted, really.
Right.
And still didn't want. We can't get rid of it.
We can't get rid of it. So, you know, to me, that, back to your question, the idea of this sort of self-sovereign identity really is, if we just took a step back and said to ourselves, what if we don't know who this person is, right? What if the work we need to do is to get them to tell us who we are, who they are, right? So imagine if you're now creating work, it could be anything, a TV commercial, whatever it is, that's inviting people to engage as that true self, right? And instead of making the assumption that they are that demographic that you bought against, why don't you just wait to see and then respond in kind? And I think that that's where, you know, when we talk about like D&I and inclusivity and inclusion, that spectrum is much bigger than we think. Much, much bigger than we think. So that's kind of where my head's at.
So the late Lester Wonderman, another one of my mentors, always said it's all about the value exchange. And it's amazing. He was talking about this in the 1950s. So it's the value exchange. Don't assume. Create a value exchange from the very first discussion, so that I only ask you for one little thing. But whatever I ask you for, I give you back double for that one thing. So it's got to be the easiest thing. Right. So maybe it's your email. Well, give me your email. So what do I give you back for your email? Whatever it is, I give you a lot. Then I ask you, like, hey, tell me a little bit about your family. And now you tell me that. I give you more value exchange. And each thing that I ask you, never a whole page full of stuff, I increase the value of that value exchange to you. At the end of that, he always had to think about relationships. He's like, nobody really wants to have a relationship with a toothpaste. But we have a value exchange relationship that works. And you're going to stay loyal to me because it's valuable.
You know, you can teach a crow to do tasks of a human being by every time they do the task, you give them two pieces and 3 pieces and 4 pieces. You know, it's wired in our brains, you know, and I think now, you know, I think he was right in that instance. And I think, you know, I think people back then primarily did that in over mail, right? So like,
most of them.
But now when you think about again, at speed, the hyper, you know, speed that we're at and doing that.
There's more opportunity.
And to do it in real time. You know what I mean? So people are reacting to things in real time. You know, so imagine the opportunities to get them to self-select or self-identify in those moments, and then you can now have a conversation. But I think we're just missing that point right now.
I hear you. Yeah.
Bing.
So I have this thing in all my presentations. Whenever I tell people to Google something, I say Google and or Bing. And I always mention Bing once because Microsoft is always my favorite client. And I sort of feel obligated to do it. But as we know, Bing was kind of second rate. never really worked well, never took serious market share. And I'm not talking about advertising market share yet, just serious search market share from
share of search
from Google, etc. So now they make a deal with ChatGPT, which is interesting.
It's really interesting. I think the idea of ChatGPT, which in many ways is quite threatening to people, and I think again, it's all marketing. It's all marketing. ChatGPT was really smart in the sense that they put themselves alongside a partner in which people could now, understand the value of what the technology is going to bring to them. ChatGPT on its own is scary because you're not sure what it is, what it does, what it's meant to do. Now, when you take ChatGPT and you say, Microsoft Word, right? Oh, wow, you're going to tell me that while I write a paper, it'll help me in real time that's great, right? So what I love about the partnership is that it immediately puts the technology into context that's non-threatening, right? If ChatGPT was put into a Tesla, it might have been like, what is this? You know what I mean? But Microsoft to me has always been the type of company that purposefully feels a little further back in the past. I mean, Windows had always felt quite dated. Word hasn't changed and Excel hasn't changed in 20 years, literally. I mean, it looks the same as it looked, except for the blue bar. It looks the same. So what a wonderful way to take something that's highly differentiated and put it next to something very familiar. It kind of takes the edge off a little bit and it kind of gives it a little bit more approachability.
And as we discussed, Microsoft is the most successful when they focus on productivity.
Productivity, right.
On human productivity.
Right.
They never lose.
Right.
Like they're always successful. And yeah, it is a little dated looking, maybe.
Right.
But first of all, none of us use anywhere more than 2% or 3% of what it's possible to do anyways.
Right.
But it works.
It works, exactly.
And it's reliable and it never fails you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're in the cloud, so that makes it even better. It took them a little bit, but they're there. And so I saw this as the ultimate productivity tool because versus Google, which you put in, and to your point before, you get first 5 pages of advertising, sponsored leads. Okay, I got to pass those. And then you get the guys who are really brilliant at SEO have absolutely nothing. There's nothing worse than somebody who's amazing at SEO and has told you that they've got this exact jacket or they're going to tell you about Albert Einstein because that's what you're looking for. And you go in and actually they're selling Armani dresses. And it's not about Albert Einstein, it's about Ludacris.
It's total bait and switch.
Total bait and switch. Just because they push themselves up to the top of anything and hoping that you're going to go there and click and that'll be the end of it.
That idea of like conquesting, I think it's called conquesting, and it's frustrating. I think Google, the promise of Google was great, right? Like to index the entire internet or to create a way to access but to your point, I think we've just muddied it up.
We've muddied it up, but I think in the case of how they're going to work with Bing, to me, and I've been doing a lot of work with ChatGPT. In fact, all of my posts now, I always ask it whatever I'm writing to write a paragraph, and I put it in, make it clear who it comes from. It's always interesting to see. But I think what's really interesting to me in this is that versus the little paragraph they give you that may or may not be correct, that goes back, is limited in its time scope because it's not completely up to date yet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, versus getting that paragraph, but having the paragraph with attributions, with other sources to look at, with other places to go. That to me is the ultimate productivity. And by the way, that makes me happy for mankind. Because I don't want my kids or my grandkids to read some paragraph that ChatGPT writes and think that that's the sum total of human knowledge. I want them to go look. I want them to understand what linkage is.
I mean, we can't lose the rabbit hole. Like the rabbit hole, we love rabbit holes. I mean,
my favorite.
That's how we think. That's how our minds work. We meander. That's human hunter gatherer, kind of we gather. I agree. I think, and I haven't seen it yet. I've read all the stories, and I think I know what it's going to look like, but I haven't really seen it yet. I'm excited. I'm on the wait list. I'm excited to see. And to your point, I think Microsoft can do a really good job at positioning Bing as something not search. You know what I mean? It's something that, is more of a reference. Learning, exactly.
Advanced mankind. Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
Exactly. Where Google, I think, was always sort of seen as a shortcut. It's like.
So future now jury.
Yes.
You graced us last year and this year president, which is great. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
What are you looking for? Talk to.
Yeah.
Our folk out there are going to be submitting.
Yeah.
What are you looking for? What's going to win me?
Yeah. I think apropos to this conversation, I'm looking for the convergence of, innovation, creativity, empathy.
Empathy is in humanity.
Humanity. I judge a lot of award shows. I look at a lot of this kind of work. And to me, I can immediately sort of see through the facade of using technology for technology's sake, just to say like, hey, we did this thing, I'm really looking for, not putting two things side by side, but finding ways that things sort of intermingle and that you can apply the technology, you can apply the innovation, you can apply the idea, to things that feel familiar, to things that feel real, and I see so many cases where, it's a wonderful story, but there's just you can't touch it. You can't feel it. It just isn't going anywhere. It's kind of a nice thought, and so for me, it's applied creativity. When we say applied technology or applied
creativity, I like that. Applied technology, applied.
Yeah, applied creativity. I love, again, I said it before, invisible. Like, I don't want to see the tech. I don't want to hear about the tech. I know what it is. I can identify it. If you're using AI, I can figure that out. But where does it live within the idea? How does it benefit the idea? And how does it take the idea to the next level as a world-class idea?
Right. Don't start with it. Never seen before.
Exactly. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that.
When I judge stuff, I used to literally, I read those, I would skip.
Yeah, skip. Don't enter it. It's skip. Yeah. So, for me, it really is, I would love this to be a platform for festivals to really kind of set the bar for that kind of work and really make a statement that, we celebrate, again, this applied creativity. We're not celebrating a shiny object. We're not celebrating, I always thought it was funny when Google would enter an award show. And they would kill the category and they would win a titanium blah, blah, blah. Of course,
who else is going to win?
We're not competing at the same level, and here I think we want to establish a level and establish a benchmark for what I think, constitutes creativity in the realm of innovation and technology.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being my colleague.
Oh, thank you.
Best luck for the new job, and we hope to hear a lot about Craig and Lippe Taylor. And you heard it here, applied creativity, humanity, empathy, invisible technology. Don't start with never seen before in the history of humanity. They ain't gonna win you anything. But Craig, it's been wonderful. And again, best of luck at Lippe Taylor. Tell it all my friends. And what can I say? From Lower Manhattan, Silverstein Studios at 7 World Trade Center, where the energy is just off the charts. New York is back. It's a renaissance. It's amazing. Coming to you for creativity from the other side, we talk to the best of the best, as we just have for New York festivals. Talk about the best festival. This is where reality hits the industry, where the best work is awarded in the best way. So thank you so much for listening. Share it if you liked it, and see you in the next one.